Good morning. Today is Thursday, February the 20th. My name is Donna Smirniotopoulos, and I'm the host of this channel, Angry Taxpayer. There's a lot to talk about today. I probably won't have time to get through all of it, or I will, but you may not have time to get through all of it. There was a Board of Education meeting on Tuesday, chock full of surprises, not really. Last night, there was a presidential debate, which was sort of like Wednesday Night Raw, I guess, is how I would characterize it. So awful you couldn't tear your eyes away. And then in between those two was the non-vote on tolls. Things went horribly wrong for Governor Lamont, and in my opinion, Bob Duff, who's the Senate Majority Leader, and Martin Looney, who is the President pro tempore of the Senate, failed to deliver the votes that Lamont needed for tolls. And this could be bad news for Senator Duff, and we'll get into the whys of that. So the Board of Education had their meeting on Tuesday. They relocated public comment to the front of the meeting, which is where it belongs, because it is nonsensical to take votes on things and then take public comment at the end. Nevertheless, I decided not to go. When you know how the vote is going to go, and this fell out exactly as I thought it would, you know, sometimes you're wasting your time actually appearing in person. And so I watched remotely. Most of the public comment was about year-round school at Kendall. And there were a lot of Spanish-speaking students, and they had a translator. And so, public comment took twice as long because everything was said in Spanish and then repeated in English. And then when English-speaking speakers came forward, like Mary Jordan, the president of the union, then since the translator was already there, he was translating for them into Spanish so that the audience members could understand, which is fine, except then when they got to the Board of Education conversation and discussion of their agenda items, it was all in English. So what's the point of bringing in the translator if you're not going to translate the whole thing for your audience? Now, as I said, the votes did not surprise me. The first agenda item that they voted on, the action item, was to approve the educational specifications for the brand new Norwalk High School, or what I now have taken to calling Bob Duff's fake high school, or Bob Duff High. No surprise that they approved this. Mike Barbas was the lone holdout, so it was an 8-1 vote. I was hoping that Diana Carpio would vote no. I was hoping maybe Heidi Keyes or Sherelle Harris would also reserve their judgment. They're all from the same party. And what Sarah Lemieux, the interim chair of the Board of Ed, said is, well, we believe the mayor is going to uphold his promises, and that the money that the chief financial officer for the city, Henry Dashowitz, has held up for capital budget for the public schools, that $10 million is going to be restored. Now, I don't recall if they actually wrote that into their vote, that this is a conditional vote. They said it was a conditional vote, but I don't know if that was actually in the script. Now, Heidi Keyes was very careful to say that this has not been appropriately vetted, not in the traditional way that school projects are vetted, and especially if you're looking at a brand new school, from the ground up. They're only getting 100 more spaces out of it, so they're not doing this because of enrollment problems. They're doing this because Bob Duff decided he wanted a new school, and there's probably more to it than just Bob Duff deciding that he wanted a new school. But the vetting wasn't there. Jim Giuliano, who is a contractor to the city on school facilities, he drew up the ed specs. He drew up the original ones and then the revised ed specs. And there's all kinds of stuff in there that, I don't know why they're in there. Apparently there are some beds. There are some like bedrooms or beds in the ed specs. I don't know whether this is a regulatory requirement that you need beds for certain disabled students to be able to lie down. And as far as I recall, the nurse's office always had beds. So why those beds are not sufficient is unclear. A lot of things unclear about this budget. There's a huge amount of money for support staff rather than just educational delivery staff. And then you have the cost to put up a black box theater and a 1,200 seat auditorium we are hoping we're going to get 80% reimbursement from the state, but we don't know that yet. And so what I'm imagining from this vote is that if Bob Duff cannot get this bill passed, then the Board of Education will pull the plug, in which case this is all a huge waste of time. Now, the reason that people showed up for this meeting to speak was the implementation of year-round school at Kendall. So Kendall has been singled out as having an achievement gap problem. And the Board of Education, or rather the superintendent, believes that implementing year-round classes will help to address the achievement gap at this school. And sometimes that actually works, that year-round school, you don't have so much loss of content knowledge over the summer, and the breaks are shorter, so you don't have a 6-week or an 8-week or a 9-week break over the summer, during which time, especially in math, students tend to fall behind or forget what they had previously learned. So the Spanish-speaking students were very much in favor of, the ones who spoke, were for the most part in favor of implementing this program. The Norwalk Federation of Teachers, represented by Mary Jordan, she was fairly opaque, but it didn't sound like she was saying that all the teachers were on board with this. And then one teacher from Kendall, speaking for herself and on behalf of others who perhaps were afraid to speak, had a couple really interesting things to say. I believe her name was Kelly Dominic. But she said that, what you want ideally in a school where there is an achievement gap problem is your most senior level, your most experienced teachers. And as a result of the plan to shift to year-round schedule, there was an unprecedented number of Kendall teachers, senior Kendall teachers, who were asking to be reassigned because the year-round schedule conflicted with their own needs as a parent, which makes perfect sense. So that what they were ending up with at Kendall, after all the dust is settled, is a bunch of inexperienced teachers, and that was not going to serve the needs of a student body that had an achievement gap to cross or to cover. So when the Board of Ed finally got down to voting on this, what I found interesting, and I always find these things kind of comical, they took a break before they decided to vote on things, and it seemed to me that somebody, they hooked up in the bathroom, not literally hooked up, but ran into each other in the bathroom, planned to meet someplace in the hallway, and how are we going to script this? Because remember, this is all one party on our Board of Education now, so nothing they do in front of us has to be authentic or genuine or spontaneous. And if it seems fake or planned, it probably is fake and planned. So it sounded like the conversation about year-round school, Dashowitz cut the budget. So he's only giving them $9.9 million more than last year, which is a breathtaking amount of money. It's a huge amount of money. It's a huge uptick in the school budget. But that's not enough to cover the things they have to pay for. So they knew they were going to have to throw Kendall on the chopping block. But rather than saying that, they kind of put it, in slightly different terms. So, they did blame the city for the budget cuts, which were going to make it impossible to implement Kendall. But what they were also doing was pacifying the various interest groups who opposed it. So they were able to achieve 2 goals with a single vote, which is, bottom line is we don't have the money for this. But also, if we say yes, we're going to make a whole bunch of people, teachers who tend to vote Democratic, we're going to make a whole bunch of people unhappy. So our excuse is the chief financial officer for the city cut the budget, and we really want to do what's best for you, but we can't because our hands are tied. And their hands being tied makes the vote in favor of the ed specs for Norwalk High School all the more interesting. Because, well, first of all, Colin Hassan seems to have some confusion, between what is a capital expense and what is a repeating operational expense. So Norwalk High School would be a capital expenditure, and the fact the city's going to pay, the state would theoretically pay 80%, assuming that Bob Duff can craft the legislation and get the votes for it, that there is no cost for Norwalk and that we don't have to bond anything. This is completely untrue. And when this item was inserted into the capital budget presentation a few weeks ago, it was listed as a $225 million line item. When Bob Duff unveiled it on December 9th, the figure was $200 million. Bob has since backpedaled and said, well, no, I never said $200 million. But, the way most of us see this is that the cost has already gone up more than 10% in just a couple months. So, Duff's argument, on the other hand, is let's push it through because it's only going to get more expensive. Well, this is like justifying buying a new car today because that same car is going to be more expensive next year. And how do you justify it when you don't really need a new car? So I think this is an argument he has really struggled to make convincingly. He says we did this and we did that, but I think what he really means when he says we, he's talking about himself and Costa Diamantes. Now, the reason that all of this may be completely moot is that yesterday the legislature came to an impasse. So this all started to boil over Tuesday into Tuesday night. Governor Lamont said, well, there was a 30-hour Republican filibuster, and I believe that, but the Democrats in the legislature decided to split the baby. And here's what I think happened. I think that nobody wanted to be the first one to drink the Kool-Aid here. So for some people, a yes vote for tolls would have been political suicide, maybe for most of them. And maybe they reasoned privately, caucusing, that the only way they were going to get through this intact is if they all agreed to vote at the same time, and then nobody wanted to be the first one to jump off the cliff. So they didn't get the votes, and the motion, the bill is withdrawn. Lamont has pulled the plug on it. I don't think this is going away. But the reason it's important for us in Norwalk is that many people, myself among them, many people believe that Duff's ability to get the votes for tolls, to make this vote happen, because Lamont wanted it, that the vote for tolls was tied to the legislation for the new Norwalk High School. Duff failed. He's been extremely quiet, uncharacteristically quiet. I haven't even seen a weather report for Senator Duff. So will be interesting to see how this unfolds over the next few weeks. Don't be surprised if they try and sneak in that toll legislation while we're sleeping or on vacation or something, because this is something that is, it's completely legit. For all our talk about how sneaky and underhanded our president is, it turns out that it's completely legal for the General Assembly for the state of Connecticut to do things behind our backs and sneak things in behind our backs. Now, I don't know if any of you watched the debate last night. I don't usually talk about national politics, but this was just too true to be good. We had Michael Bloomberg on the stage for the first time, facing off with Bernie Sanders. It was sort of like the battle of who's the richest, and really funny and ironic for a millionaire with 3 houses to be pointing a finger at a billionaire and saying, well, you're too rich for this job. Bernie Sanders, for the record, for all you people out there who love him, he's never legitimately held down a real job in his entire life. He has spent, what is he, close to 80 now? So he spent 60 years sucking off the teat of the taxpayer. Think about that for a minute. It's no wonder his policies are the way they are, because this is the only thing he knows how to do, is to live off taxpayer money. He's always done it. He's never had a legit job. Even his wife has, her employment has come through taxpayer dollars. So, what I like about Bernie is he's very genuine, he's authentic, he believes in his own bullshit. That can be scary and dangerous also. Amy Klobuchar, who I think is the lone moderate on the stage, spent a lot of time pointing fingers at Mayor Pete. And, had that been a man pointing a finger at her, we would have heard all about how sexist that was this morning. And Elizabeth Warren, there was a time I really had a lot of respect for Elizabeth Warren. Now she just sounds like that cranky old librarian who keeps chasing you down for your overdue library books. So she is not doing anything for me. Biden was very smart. He just stood there and stood up straight. and tried to pretend that he was not the most doddering and oldest man on the stage. Bloomberg struggled. He said there were a few gems. He said, I got lucky, I made a lot of money. And, about the non-disclosure agreements, he said, well, maybe somebody didn't like a joke that I told. So I don't think he performed well. It may not matter. What Bernie Sanders objects to in Bloomberg is that he is using his own wealth in order to advertise himself. We haven't made that illegal. Maybe this is something Bernie wants to do. My opinion about Bernie Sanders is his vision for America is un-American. It's just completely un-American. He would fundamentally change the country. I don't think he's electable for that reason. I think he is way too far to the left. His initiatives are way too expensive. And I don't think people have really thought that through. But it behooves all of us to figure out what the draw is, just like we should have, the Democrats should have been thinking about what the draw was for Donald Trump in 2016, and they didn't. They just said, well, let's just impeach the guy, instead of figuring out, well, why are people attracted to Donald Trump, to run the country? Because he's a disruptor. He said this system is full of shit, and I'm just going to disrupt the system, and I'm gonna lift the veil off of politics. So what you see is what you get with him. I think that people who love Bernie Sanders and people who don't like Bernie Sanders should find out what the draw is there. Obviously, there is some discontent. There are people who feel that they are not given a fair chance. And so the question is, do we believe government is where we level the playing field and give everyone a fair chance? And do we accomplish this through wealth redistribution? Do we basically punish people for working hard, taking risks, sacrificing, saving, and being successful in order to make things more fair? My opinion is, I don't think the government owes us a level playing field. They can't make everyone equal. We are born with different abilities and different shapes and sizes and colors and religions and so forth. And I don't think it's the job of government to do that. And in fact, I think that all of these people, most of these people who are discontent with the way things are, might be better served if we had less government and less regulation. We just let the market do what it needed to do. My opinion is government interference is expensive for everybody. It's expensive for taxpayers because we have to pay for it. And it costs businesses more money to stay in business, to do business, because of all the government regulation. So, but educating people about the role of government, the proper role of government, and the improper role of government. This is a very steep learning curve. Government should be, local government should be, keeping the streets up and the sidewalks up and taking care of the trash, and that's about it. And of course, the Board of Ed budget is, teetering close to the 60% mark of our budget, which doesn't mean we should stop paying for public education, but I think it's appropriate to put the brakes on occasionally and take a look at where that money is going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the debate last night. If you did not watch it, I encourage you to watch it if you have a couple hours to kill and you're looking for a few laughs. It was like a train wreck. You couldn't take your eyes off the spectacle. At one point, I think Bernie Sanders said something about, well, here's what I have in common with Michael Bloomberg. We both have 2 stents. And Bloomberg said, yeah, but I got mine in the 80s. So I don't know. I thought it was hilarious. I don't think it was a good night for Bloomberg. It was not a good night for Amy Klobuchar, which is too bad. But probably an okay night for Bernie Sanders. Hope you have a great day, and tune into my blog, or sign up for the blog. The name of the blog is angrytaxpayernorwalk.com. So I encourage you all to subscribe to the blog, and I will be covering some of this on the blog as well. Hope you have a great day, and hope to see you sometime soon. Ta-ta for now.